Jason Wilson, cannabis research banking expert, ETF, MJ ETF, right? That's the key. One of the key holdings is Scott's Miracle-Gro. So it's interesting because you're not saying just hold the cannabis. You have a little bit outside the box of cannabis, related to cannabis, right? Tell me more.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we put MJ together, the whole theory was to grab the entire ecosystem, not just to look at the companies that are growing cannabis. We took a more holistic approach, not just on a regional scale, globally as well, but it was really looking at companies that produce cannabis, but also produce cannabis-related products, companies that support that ecosystem. Scott's Miracle-Gro is a great example of that, where they're going and their Hawthorne division has sells a lot direct to consumer for those that live in states that legalize cannabis and they can grow cannabis at home. Their earnings are up tremendously. If you look at Scott's Miracle-Gro, I think across the board, their earnings that they just released were up approximately 28%, but the Hawthorne division alone, which is kind of their cannabis arm, if you will, was up 72%. So that's showing the growth in the industry right there. GW Pharma is another one. Yeah. Right, they're out there. They're doing a great job.
Oh yes, GW Pharma. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, again, looking at their most recent earnings, we saw strong sales growth, almost primarily hinged around the sale of Epidiolex, which is the only plant-based CBD product approved by the FDA in the U.S. Recently, the FDA has expanded both the types of ailments it can treat, but beyond that, it's expanded the age range of patients. So, we should expect to see earnings to continue to grow there. And then there's other ancillary companies like Turning Point Brands as well. Again, we saw a nice lift in their earnings. And this is all happening through COVID-19, where there's been massive disruption. But we've seen the cannabis, revenues continue to increase in states that have legalized. Illinois is a great example. We've seen strong growth in recreational sales there. Florida continuing to see a lot of new medical patients. Canada, in its second year of legalization now, we're seeing, again, 3-4 months ago, we're averaging about $150 million a month in sales. Now we're over 180. So we're seeing kind of quarter over quarter, and we have for the last several quarters in the US, in Canada, global markets, this kind of 10, 15, 20% per annum growth in the industry. So back to MJ, our goal is to capture all components of that. And, Scott's Miracle-Gro, again, great example. GW Pharma, great example of another way to play it. More diversified, full exposure, a little bit less risk.
Right. With MJ, I don't know what's going to happen with the space and what your outlook is. You could put it together. Tell us your outlook for 2020 and going forward the next couple of years after that, as you say and recommend MJ here. What kind of growth are you expecting for MJ and the group overall?
Well, it's kind of an interesting time where we're at, just generally speaking, and COVID-19 has been incredibly disruptive. I truly believe the cannabis industry is going to be one of the few industries that can really succeed post-COVID. I mean, we're seeing the growth, we're seeing the demand. It's, from the medical side, the science side. There's also a recreational component, the vice component. They tend to do well in times like this. It has that going for it. But, it's also very reminiscent of the end of prohibition. If you go back to the, early 30s, coming out of the Great Depression, states or, federal balance sheets, state balance sheets, everyone was hurting. And, part of the New Deal was, how do we finance the New Deal? Democrats were coming into power back then. We saw, a lot of kind of a change in paradigm, and that created the political willpower back in the 30s, right, and alcohol prohibition. And, we're kind of drawing a lot of parallels right now. I mean, we're looking at a time where, unemployment claims are up dramatically. Obviously, cities, states are looking at their finances and saying, how do we fill these holes? The U.S. legal cannabis industry has been the fastest growing job sector going. I mean, since in the last few years, it's added over 250,000 jobs in the U.S. So I think there's going to be a lot of political willpower to move towards federal legalization. I know it's going to continue at the state level. And it's also global. I mean, the World Health Organization has actually recommended that cannabis be rescheduled, and the UN's going to vote on that in December. So I think you can see between the UN, which has always followed the WHO's recommendation, and the U.S. political environment, I think we have a very good chance to see U.S. and global legalization, which would be a massive catalyst for the industry.
Right. I got to go. I'm out of time. But it's fair to say that you would much prefer us get the ETF, MJ, than buying specific names like Tilray or Canopy or Aurora or things like that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's one way to play it.
Okay. Jason Wilson, thank you.
Nice to.
Thank you so much. Jason Wilson, Cannabis Research, banking expert, ETF MG. MJ is the fund. You can look for that.